I've been going to talk a little bit about minimizing waste in construction. Just a bit of background to me, I'm Director of Offsite Construction at Ramboll. It's a relatively new thing that I've picked up, having been involved in offsite construction probably for over 15 years and been in the industry for 20 years. And whilst I'm going to talk about offsite construction today, I'm going to talk about it in context of waste, but also the context of carbon and also decision making and data and digital. So quite a lot of sort of various interlinking aspects there, but hopefully the flow will come through in terms of the presentation, and you'll hopefully come out at the end of it with enthused with where we think we should go as an industry. So I thought I'd start off by just talking a little bit about waste and what waste is produced and how we can look at it. So obviously we're fairly common thing on our sites around the country of skips like this, but actually, what is the actual magnitude of the problem? Now, while some of this data might be slightly out of date in terms of the waste we produce, I don't think the magnitude of it is still quite significant. So each year, about 400 million tons of materials are used in the construction industry. Staggeringly, about 100 million tons of that is wasted. So a quarter of that we managed to somehow waste on our construction sites during manufacture, production, and everything else. And potentially even a quarter of that is sent to landfill. Now, I'm sure that detail will change, and some of that has more to do with groundworks and that kind of stuff. But for me, when I was looking at this, it was just staggering the amount that we waste and we don't use efficiently. Now, to put that into kind of context, you've seen some really good things from Natasha and Margaret about this in terms of an engineer's footprint, in terms of personal emissions versus professional emissions. Now, what I think is actually that the professional emissions are actually a little bit higher than that, even still, just because as Margaret mentioned, most of her things were A1 to A3. Obviously, the good work that John's doing now in terms of capturing the A5 in there, I think our ones are A1 to A3. I think we should be, the professional emissions are actually a lot higher than we actually think they are when we start to include waste. So for me, putting it into this kind of context really helped to galvanize my thoughts on it and work out where we were going to go. So how do we solve this? Well, we're going to hear later, and we've heard from Natasha about challenging the brief, optimizing the design, cutting the carbon. They are exactly where we need to be focusing. But I also think there's another bit to it. When we start to look at it, we can do all these carbon dashboards, we can do life cycle analysis, carbon offsets. We could even start to look at the carbon cost and the societal cost of what we're looking at. Right back to what Mike was saying about the donut and things. But really, I think there is also another layer to this that we should be thinking about, and that's thinking about a digital and data-led approach to decision making. So whilst it's not something that would come say naturally to an engineer, the decision-making aspect, the digital and the data-led, it's just a natural extension in my mind of where we are going as an industry and where we need to take ourselves as an industry. So how do we make decisions at the moment? How do we work through things? Well, normally we have a fairly standard linear process of design, procurement, delivery, and then operation. And through all of these, we start to add value, and we have a nice, at the end of it, we've added a lot of value, and we've, whether that value is monetary, whether it's in, reducing embodied carbon, reducing overall carbon, those kind of things. But actually, what starts to happen is at various points, we start to lose that. So that's, again, that question that Margaret answered about how do we ensure our contractors are are following through on what we specified. Those kind of things are where we start to lose that. And we end up with what I think is a really big missed opportunity here. And a lot of it, I think, comes down to decision making and how we do that. We've got the brief, concept, design, build, operate aspect. But when you start to bring in all the other aspects in there, it's a very muddy way of actually procuring a project and delivering a project. And what you end up with is something that's really a bit more like this. You have all your inputs, and then suddenly it gets into a big mess. and people can't work out where they're going or what is the right information and what isn't the right information. And you end up with risk, which then basically comes into a fear of decision making, and that fear of decision making can add to waste. Waste in the process, waste in materials, and waste in that kind of way. So I think we really need to start thinking about how we can impact decision making so that we can start to reduce waste and working through that. So what I think the impact of empowering our clients, and it doesn't have to be our clients, but and our colleagues and our collaborators and design teams to do, is actually start to think about, okay, when and how can we influence carbon? So as you can see from this graph, the blue line decreases, so our ability to influence carbon in any kind of project decreases as more decisions are made and we get further down the line of the project. But conversely, our accuracy of our assessment, whether that be carbon or other things, starts to increase as we go on. So what we can do is, if we start to capture our data, start to work in a digital way, what we can really do is start to bring that accuracy assessment across to the left. That means that our ability to influence carbon is increased, and we can make those decisions at an earlier stage. So we can really start to look at that and start to address it. So how do we think we can make better decisions? Well, there are lots and lots of publications out there, some really, really good ones about, modern methods of construction, productivity, industrial strategy, and they are great, and there's a plethora of them, but our clients are not going to have understood those or read those, or really, we need to disseminate that information to them. But I think there's 3 key things that we can do to help our clients and help, to push forward the agenda of minimizing waste, which in my mind means minimizing carbon as well. So I think there's 3 kind of aspects to it. The first one is standardization of our designs, of the ways we're working. Second one is, following on from that, and it has to start with standardization, is off-site manufacture. What can we do in terms of off-site, and how can we maximize the opportunities for that? And then overlay that with a digital thread in terms of how can we use the digital world to help us, to enable us to make those better decisions, to go further and faster. Now, some people may say digitalization, there are lots of drawbacks with that, and yes, there are, but we have to embrace them, and we have to work with them and make sure we can maintain that quality and that service to our clients while producing that, by working down the digitalization route. So scale of standardization can have many different things. On the left-hand side, we already deal with standardization. We have standard steel section, column sizes, beam sizes. We have that standardization there. And it can go all the way from the left, all the way through to bathroom pods, standard apartment layouts, and through to, platform construction. And that's really, kit to parts, which is where we should be going as an industry to reduce that waste. But standardization, quite often people think about, well, that means we'll just get shoe boxes. But actually, in the right ways, it should increase quality, which will reduce waste. It should increase efficiency, again reducing waste, and it still allows us to be creative. Okay, it gives us a kind of book to work with in terms of creativity, but you don't have to be constrained by standardization in terms of creativity. There's still a lot of creative thoughts can go on in that kind of space. So just as an example, here are some sort of 1-bed, 2-bed, 3-bed layouts, and you can go right to a macro level, a high level, and start to arrange them in a very Jenga fashion with a core, and looking at it from a high level. You can go down to a more micro level, with on the left there you've got a kitchen, on the middle you've got a bathroom, on the right you've got a balcony. That's although you can argue that's not even down at the micro level, that's in the middle level, because then you can go down to the exact fixings and the exact screws and everything else that you use in there. And you start to eliminate waste by having repeatability, people know what they're doing, factory controlled environments, all of those very good things that come with off-site or just pre-manufactured aspects. And it also applies not just to structures, but to MEP and how we can work through that. So there's also the aspect of user customization. It doesn't have to be standardization means everyone gets the same. We've been working with New Build for a number of years, and they have a standardized product in terms of their CLT manufactured houses. But the clients are still able, the customers are still able to go onto an app, as shown on the right, and start to customize their design. And it is effectively not a just-in-time delivery, but it's you choose your house, you choose how it's going to work. You can choose whether the kitchen's at the front or the back, those kind of things, and you can choose it on the app, and then it goes into the factory. So there's minimized waste, and the customers still get what they want. So in terms of off-site manufacture, there are many different types of off-site manufacture. I've been very fortunate enough to work on a number of projects. These are not all my ones, but they are ones that we've done through Ramboll, really kind of falling into three different packs: modular steel, precast concrete, and cross-laminated timber. So they're the main focus that we've had in terms of off-site manufacture. There are obviously others like gauge steel and the like, which have featured in there as well. So there are things, just as an example, this is Dawson Works, which is a project I worked on a number of years ago, CLT residential project. Then you've got things like precast, which this is a hotel in Scandinavia, where they have adopted precast manufacturing and precast concrete a lot more, and they make it work on creative projects such as this. This is a hotel which is leaning, and towers which still managed to work in a precast environment. And then you've got things like modular steel, which again have that reduced waste factory controlled environment, and lifting into place, and minimal people on site, quick, and safer on site because of it. And then, this is a image from New Build. This is one of their modules that they're manufacturing, and you can see, lifting into place. It's a very simple technology to use, but still creates very nice accommodation for the customers. And then digitalization. So really, this can come down through product development and a kit of parts. If we start to have that product development, that kit of parts, we can start to really advance the digitalization aspects, because we don't have too many variables. At the moment, when we start to talk about digitalization, we start to get scared because there's so many variables in there. We need to cut down those variables so we can start to use digital means to really help us and move us forward. So this is just an example of a simple Revit script that we wrote, which allows the client to go, okay, I want an RC frame. Actually, maybe I want to change that to precast, and then I can start to individualize my elements and start to change them again and work through it. And again, it just allows them to repeat those elements and copy them across. So it's got the engineering background behind it, but it allows a standardized approach to things. Now, again, this might be slightly controversial in terms of where we're going as an industry, but we are going to be going there, and I think we need to embrace it, and we need to make sure that we are still providing our clients with a quality service and one that has design in there, while still enabling us to cut the carbon and cut the waste. Again, this one is a script that we've written that allows, again, a very quick modular approach to it, in terms of saying, okay, we have a CLT floor, maybe an apartment layout. What we're going to do is we're going to look at the height of the building, look at what size elements we need, and then we're going to adjust it and maybe say, actually, I don't want to do CLT, I want to do a concrete frame. What does that look like? This then enables the cost manager and everyone else to get that data really quickly, to enable our clients to make those decisions, to then go, okay, we know which frame we're going for, and then we can start down the path of, okay, let's optimize it, let's refine it, let's really start to cut the carbon even more. So it gives them those early decision-making process to be able to make those quick decisions, and then move on with the knowledge that we can invest our time and effort into cutting carbon even more. So really, what I'd like to end with, pretty much on time, is how that digital and data design process really works. So if we start off with a kit of parts, then we can start to design better, we can start to optimize, we can build quicker. Then we can start to reuse building parts. Obviously I'm really looking forward to Steve talking about how we can reuse buildings and things, but we also need to start thinking about what are we doing now and how can we reuse what we're doing now in the future. And if we can standardize and have that kit of parts, it makes it much more probable that we will be able to do that. And then that feedback and improvements. So, John was talking about that database and of the carbon. That's, really where we need to be. We need to have, really good data, because then we can improve and we can have that feedback and we can get better at what we're doing. So what does the future look like? Well, I hope the future is really focusing on the reuse of the building parts and the feedback and improvements, and that could be as simple as a number of construction hubs which allow parts of the building to be stored and then called on and reused when they need to be in the next stage or in another project. Because clients at the moment, when they finish a project or they demolish something, they will either look to reuse it or, they might send the crushed waste away to be reused. But why can't we reuse elements of it? And if we have that kit of parts, standardized design, and the waste of storage, we can really start to move it forward. So I think for me, that is where we are. And I think if we can have improved decision making through a digital and data-led approach, we can really start to accelerate and push forward all of the initiatives that we've heard of today. And I think we need to help our decision making with our clients, with everyone else. And as Mike said earlier, as engineers, we can only have 10% impact, but if we include design teams and clients, we can increase that to 50%. And that's really where I think we should be going and really testing where we can get to. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Gavin. Brilliant. A fantastic glimpse into the future, except it's not really the future, is it? We're pretty much already there. Really great to hear your thoughts on, getting rid of that 20% of construction waste in the here and now. Obviously, it's, I think you touched on it at the end when you started to move towards talking about what some people term circular economy and, the constant reuse of products into the future will obviously therefore, reduces construction waste far more than 20% in the long term. I think the first one that's worth asking is more to do with offsite manufacture. So to Gavin, and it's questions around how do you ensure that offsite is lower carbon overall? So you obviously talked about the obvious decrease in waste, but there are concerns from some people about maybe you have increased transport emissions, maybe there are increased cement content being used in your concrete because of wanting to construct things quickly in the offsite manufacturing systems. How do you deal with that as a designer?
Yeah, thanks. I mean, they are really good questions, really good. For the aspect around transport and effectively transporting air around the country, I think for me the key thing is the waste. There is very controlled waste in a factory environment. We all know that will happen, but also the quality is a lot higher. There are countless examples of things being installed on site, not necessarily structures, but follow-on elements that then get taken out because the quality isn't there and then put back in and things. And so we end up with lots of waste happening around there. And it also depends how close your off-site manufacturing aspect is to your site. If you're bringing in containerized things from China, I would question the sustainability of that in some ways. But certainly the stuff we're doing for new build in Basildon, their site is 3 miles from the factory. So it's a local workforce doing a job around the local area with very minimal transport. So I think we have to look at it in the round. We have to make sure that we're advising our clients, in holistically in terms of the carbon, but also raising the questions about quality and about waste and making sure that they're addressed as well.
Fantastic. And of course, I would always say the same thing I've said for so many questions, which is do the numbers. We can do the numbers, and we absolutely should.